the town hall is divided into different topics. So we're going to start on the topic of education. So I'm here because I'm the teacher. And one of the things I noticed about the Green Party education platform was a push for sustainable schools. So one of the things, you know, in Chicago that we've negotiated in our contract is to get sustainable schools. So what I'd like to know, I'm not sure if you guys have a vision of what that looks like, but what I'd like to do is find out more about what the sustainable school system would look like. How could we or how should we nationally address the impact of over-testing, not only teachers, but also on students? How do we, what should we do, I guess, long-term through a Green Party initiative, through community pushback? How do we ensure that the quality of education that's being provided to children of color actually allows them to become critical thinkers? Because mainly what I'm hearing is that people are more likely to, you know, fall for the okie doke because they're not taught to think better or think more clearly or more truly about their lives. So if I can get just the sustainable schools and considering how can we better educate black children.
Fantastic question. Yeah, we have to have sustainable schools where we have the people who are directly being serviced by those schools actually in charge. So we take the position, for example, that we need to decentralize curriculums, that the people should have an opportunity to determine the content of education. Now, that means a lot, because, you know, one of the things happening across the country is the opposite, that there's been a centralization of education and curriculum development, so that basically you have no say-so on what your children are being exposed to. We think that that is backward. You add that with the fact that we have these all of these excessive testing for everybody, and the consequence of that is, as you know, as an educator, is that basically teachers are forced to basically teach the tests. You know, so instead of developing critical thinkers, we are kind of reinforcing a kind of authoritarianism, and the opposite of critical thinking is rote learning and just regurgitating stuff that we've been exposed to, and that is supposed to be education. Well, that's mass indoctrination, basically. You can't develop fully developed human beings with that type of educational experience. The other thing we have to deal with in terms of transforming the educational experience, and that's what we're talking about. We have to, and we are committed to a process in which we equalize funding. We know that here in this country, educational funding is based on property. I mean, everything is based on property here. And so, you know, if you live in communities where you have more wealth, then there's more resources to go into the educational institutions. Well, what that means is, one, we got to do away with that kind of funding. But in the meantime, what we can do is to have sufficient funds coming from the national level, the federal level, to equalize educational funding.
So I just have one other quick, and then we're out going to open this up to everyone, so we'll, you know, you guys can also ask questions. My question, why do you think there's a belief that we cannot have fully funded free college education, and it's done everywhere? So, and I think it speaks to something that you mentioned earlier, but if you could enlighten us, why is that, like, the Republicans, like, it'll never happen, Dems, and how could it happen?
Well, they're opposed to it because, you know, it's a big business.
Yeah.
And so we're saying that we want to take out the profit by providing free tuition, fully funded schooling from K through 16. So, you know, just like how we provide theoretically full funding up through high school, we say that should be extended through college. You need to have at least, at this point in this economy, you have to have a college degree. And if that is the minimal requirements now, then I think that it's an investment for the society, for the government, to provide resources to provide that. So our position is we are for free tuition. We also want to eliminate the debt that many people are still drowning in. That is the debt that people accumulate when they do go to school. Because right now, tuition is so expensive, and what they did coming out of the 1970s was they tilted the funding of higher education toward loans. They did not expand the grants, the Pell Grants, and those kinds of support that didn't have to be paid back, because they understood and understand today that the way you control people is that you, and nations, is that you put them in debt. Okay? And they said they were never going to have another generation like what we had in the 1960s, early 1970s. They were going to make sure that young people were going to be a little bit more conservative, because when you come out of school and you have $100,000 in school debt, you can't play around with that, activism. You got to go straight to work. And the consequence is that for many people, you never pay that debt back. Look, my birthday is tomorrow, and I didn't say it for that. But I'm going to be 63 tomorrow. Okay.
Welcome to the club.
Now, I started school a little late, but not that late, and I was able to had to take out debts like everybody, and I was able to delay some stuff, but then I had to start paying back. I only borrowed $22,000. Okay. I paid back so far about $40,000. And you would think that would be kind of, you kind of out of it. But guess how much money I owe? $55,000. So I'm going to leave this earth in debt. Okay? So we know that there are 43 million people out there like me. Okay? And we say that if they can bail out the banks, then why can't they bail us out? Okay. Now they gave the banking sector something like $16 trillion. Okay, to bring it back to the economy, they tell us, and this is done through a monetary manipulation, quantitative easing, and all of that. Well, we say that we can expand the mandate of the Fed that controls this, which I think is also backward. You need to take a look at this: the fact that private bankers control your money supply. Okay. But we can expand the mandate of the Federal Reserve so that it can, in fact, buy back the debt. Now, I just said, they gave the bankers $16 trillion to bring back the economy, they tell us. But that really went to bonuses and hoarding. But to buy back all of the debt that students owe in this country would be like $1.2, $1.3 trillion. That's doable. And that frees up people and frees up their ability to engage, to be more deeply involved in the economy. We try to stimulate spending, because it's supposed to stimulate supply, and that's what would be good for the economy. So it makes sense, but we have to make them, in fact, do that. So we can eliminate student debt, and we can have free education. But again, like anything else, we got to fight for it.
Any questions from the audience before I ask my next question?
On education, right?
On education, yes. Yes, we're still in the education section. Yes.
So this topic has been brought up numerous times, and the main thing is, how do we allocate the funds without going and raising taxes and going into debt with the country? I mean, can you finally settle this right now, a sustainable answer that will solve all the problems and no more questions on education? Because this is important.
Yeah. Well, I just laid out one mechanism for eliminating student loan, and that is using the Fed. We know that we have a lot of waste in this federal budget, and we know that we have unfairness in terms of taxes. So we say we need to have a real progressive tax system in this country, where those individuals who have the wealth pay their. We have the ability to basically transform education without it costing working people and poor people any additional resources. If we have a real progressive tax system, if we're able to cut the budget, we advocate cutting the military budget by half. We spend over $600 billion on the military. If you add in other components of the security intelligence complex, we up to $1 trillion, okay? They scare us to death, and then they take money from the public domain straight into the pockets of the private sector. We have the resources to address all of the issues, all of the material needs that we have in this society. We just have to reallocate those resources from supporting the interests of the 1% to supporting the majority. So we have the ability to provide free education. We have the ability to put real resources into education. We have the ability to do anything that we want to do once we're able to seize real control and force the owners of these resources who are now affording those resources, take our resources back from them and use that for our benefit. So we can hear without the mic.
All right, so I can take another question. Any other?
Is how overwhelmingly amount of black males are in special education. How do you plan on changing that as far as education?
That's a good question. That's part of the inability to provide sufficient resources to make sure that people are not unfairly identified as having certain kind of needs that they may not really have.
That's right.
That's part of our challenge to break up this educational experience where we can have less students in classrooms, more specialized instruction, where we can retrain instructors, retrain teachers, not to have a kind of cultural competency, that they don't mislabel individuals, and to have sufficient resources. And when we do have young people with special needs, we can address those special needs without stigmatization and without having experiences that ensure that they're never going to be able to be fully functional in this society. So again, when we shift resources, when we have people in decision-making places, positions, where we can be innovative in how we construct an educational experience, we should be able to address that issue.
So that point, I think there should be a level of balance also, because as a Chicago educator, one of the things that's happening now because of ed reform issue, the privatization of services, because of the limited amount of resources allocated to education, there are students that are in need of special ed services that are being pushed out. So I guess, you mentioned cultural competence. There are a whole lot of other things, I guess, that should also be done to ensure that we don't, cut off our nose and spite our face. We could say that the black students are being overrepresented, but are we giving them the resources they need to fully function in society and life, or are we still handicapping them by, saying that they may or may not deserve or need it? So, any other?
Well, can I say something? Now, I want to hear from you all too. But last time I came to Chicago, I was hearing in this field of education, the real, not only horror stories, but some very effective fight-back strategies. So if anybody has something like that to share, I think that would be very important for everybody to hear.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You mentioned $1.3 trillion in student debt. You also mentioned about how the banks were bailed out. It seems like that the bank's method of lobbying Congress to get that done was fear. Okay, and it's probably a combined effort on both parts, both the banks as well as Congress, putting fear on the public to get that done. First question is, what kind of lobby tactics should we do in order to get something like that initiated? And my second question is, you talked about changing or reallocating resources. Okay, it's very little, not well-known fact that once we pay taxes, it's no longer our money. We talk about our tax dollars, it's not our money anymore. It's been ruled, I don't know how many times, that we as taxpayers have no standing in the say-so of how tax dollars are spent. So my limited understanding of how the system works tells me that there's only two ways to do that. You either change the people that make the laws, or do they allocate it, or you change the laws. What do you think would be the most practical and effective way for us to get something like that going?
Good question. Well, one thing I would probably first sort of suggest that we think about it in a different way. And that is this notion that once we pay our taxes, the public has no real say-so on how those resources are allocated.
Something else go on.
We have to push back on those kinds of notions. Now, of course, the way government operates, they want us to believe that this process of allocating resources is such a specialized skill that we don't need to be part of that. But there's a thing that we talk about in the human rights field called participatory budgeting, which is we advance as a human right, that the public has a right to determine how the resources that they are collecting from us are in fact allocated. But that requires a struggle. It requires, organization and mobilization from time to time. You see, one thing we have to get across, we say over and over again, is that the only way we're going to be able to advance and protect our interests, we have to be not only educated, we have to be organized. We represent the majority, but as long as we don't understand our potential power, as long as that power is not organized, then we're going to remain dependent on these ruling elements. So first I would suggest that we kind of rethink that notion that we can't control those resources. Secondly, part of what we're doing with this Green Party is in fact changing the faces of individuals who are in these decision-making positions. We say that we don't have to just engage in protest politics. We are making demands on these politicians, these representatives. We say that we should have the power. We should take those positions.
Come on.
They belong to us.
Come on. That's right.
So we organize ourselves and we become the Board of Education.
Come on.
We take city council positions. We take state rep positions. Now I know it's easier said than done, but it's possible. There are, I move around this country, there are places, I don't know the numbers here, but places like, for example, in Atlanta, Georgia, you can take a city council spot with about 6,000 to 7,000 votes. And I tell people, you don't tell me you're doing effective organizing and you can't organize in a district and mobilize 6,000 people. If you can't do that, then you're playing games, So these positions are there for us to take, okay? And we become the policymakers. So that's what we're talking about with this campaign. And we know, it's difficult, especially in these places where you have people who are involved in sort of instinctual voting for Democrats. But we are making an argument that we want to provide an alternative, that you don't have to be dependent on the Democratic Party machine. And that's why we are trying to get on the ballot across this country, so that we can contest at every level, not just at the national level. So the way we transform policy is by basically becoming the decision makers ourselves. But we don't just put people in place as individuals. The only way that we're able to effectively take advantage of the electoral process has to be through an organized process. That is, that organizations, social movements have to make those determinations, in my opinion. I'm not about just encouraging individuals to come and present themselves to the masses,
saying, I want to run for city council, I want to run to be your mayor, I'm a good guy, vote for me. No. We want that to come out of social movement, to come out of organizations as part of a broader strategy. We want organizations to determine that at some point, we might want to run someone for the local city council position, or the local board of directors, or whatever, you know? That becomes a strategic process. That's what I'm allocating, you know? And that's different from the way in which candidates relate to and participate in the processes of the two major parties.
All right, guys, it's like 7:15 and we had only allocated a half hour to education. So what I can do, there are 3 people that have asked to speak. If you don't mind, can you guys ask your questions? Or can you respond at the end? After the 3, we'll do that. So Helen, JR, and then.
I don't have a question, I just have a suggestion. What we can do as far as schools, and that is just to try to, and of course, as VP Baraka said, it would take a lot of hard work, elbow grease, and organizing to educate our own children. The system that is in place now is not in place to educate our children. Okay? It's in place to medicate our children, dummy our children down. We are gifted. Our children are gifted. And I'm just going to say this. A white girl, 22 years old, out of college, teaching at Raster in Inglewood so that her student loans can get forgiven. She is not going to can't teach the black boys that is full of energy, very smart, whose minds are so meticulous and smart that sometimes they will turn on themselves if they're not trained right. So we should not be looking for this system to educate our children because it's not designed. You know, under the Green Party, we can have our own schools. We can educate our own children. And that's what we should be looking forward to. We should, these tests, the tests are designed to dummy our children down. You want to teach to a test. Our children are smart. Their minds are so bright. Sometimes it will turn on them because they don't have the discipline. And we are the only ones that can teach them that discipline to discipline their mind because it being so great. So we should stop, look into the school system to educate our children because it won't. It is not designed to do that.
As always, I just wanted to offer the part where we always try to figure out the community-based solutions. So, hearing a lot of human rights complaints, we heard over the last 10 years, there are enough fired school teachers, laid off school teachers, and enough empty school, closed vacant school to match the two like we do homeless people with people in housing. Is there an opportunity for the party to start talking about alternative education and repurposing spaces like that? I know in Atlanta they got the Anna Julia Cooper Learning Center and Liberation Center, right? It's like a new cooperative school model. But to replicate models like that across the country of cooperative schools, they is really controlled by the community.
This is our last speaker on education.
Well, I am a teacher too, and so it is kind of education because that's my main interest. I was very struck by this gentleman saying, when somebody pushes you, you push back. And I'm going to say, there's 2 weeks left, and I know a way you can shake it up and get plenty of attention. And this is because most people do not understand the underlying problems that have led to this. And one is, I learned about whole systems theory, because all systems in society around the world through all time are interrelated. And the people who make decisions about our life, they're very smart. They understand all about whole systems theory. I learned it from them. And they this is the great crack in the foundation of the United States. We were founded on conflict and confrontation, and that is what the status quo is keeping going. The way to change that is change the foundation of this country into collaboration and cooperation. And they're very aware of what 500 million of us around the world are doing. And that's why they're so afraid, because they know, we know what they know and how they're doing it. Because conflict and confrontation, you've given them power over you and you're doing what they want. I've seen the same pattern of problems talked about 5 times since I was a teenager in the 60s. And it's the same, even sometimes the same people. So, when you have something based on conflict and confrontation, what's the natural outcome? Fear, anger, and hatred. And you all know it, and you spend your energy on this. But if you would broaden our economic system and change our system, just put it out, you and Jill, that we're going to base our systems on cooperation and collaboration and have all our systems work together because they're interrelated. I can help you. This is my business. I haven't finished my book. It's been 20 years, really, since the 60s, trying to find out. Nobody around the world likes it. This is a crazy planet. So instead of talking, there are thousands of solutions. Zerlina knows what I am. You want to talk to me? She knows my phone number. And I have a lot of things. One thing is to go beyond beliefs, to core values and ideas. We all have our beliefs. There are decisions we made, but we all want a roof over our head and food on our plate and have a nice successful life. And
I think there's a connection between your comment and JR's comment also. That is what JR referenced were some examples around the country of people taking a problem and creating their own solutions. We support the notion of community power. That's the only way we're going to address our issues. So thinking about how we can plug into all of these educators who have been made redundant as a consequence of austerity in this country. And the fact that we have all these vacant buildings. Let's figure out what we can do in terms of having our own alternative educational experience. You know, there was a time in this country, and in the black community in particular, where most of what we did to service and support our communities were done by people who volunteered. You know, when I went to school over at Park Manor many years ago, when we got out at 3 o'clock, we didn't go home. You know, many of us went home by ourselves when we had to leave, but we were able to stay in the school until 6 because we had teachers who voluntarily decided they were going to stay there, and they would bring out every evening the ping pong tables, the pool tables, and this and that, and we would go outside, we would play baseball, it was warm, and we stayed till 6 o'clock in the evening. We didn't have to run the street. Kind of community support that ensured our survival. Okay, we've got to go back to that. That goes back to that notion of cooperation. That what we have to begin to lift back up is a different ethical framework, one in which we prioritize the values of cooperation, of service, of self-determination, if you will. And we have to do that because we don't have any other choice, because we're not going to see real profound changes in the elemental structure in the next few years. So while we are building power, at the same time, we have to survive.
Right.
So we have to build dual power. And we have to build dual power and build organizations that are addressing community needs. Education, and educational transformation being one of them. So we've got to think about things in a whole different kind of way. And we have to discuss the kinds of values and principles that we assert will be operative in the future that we're trying to build. Values and principles that go beyond the kind of competition and struggle and individualism that they hold up as being the natural values of human beings. We got to go beyond that.